Yo, Mr. Suresh Prabhu. 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have a serious problem to handle on hand in India, wherein on one hand our GDP is rising rapidly and growing now. The economy is growing at almost 8% a year. At the same time, the tax to GDP ratio is not rising. In fact, rather than rising it is to great extent declining. And that's why it's a matter of serious concern as to how we should be able to raise resources required to finance our infrastructure, to make sure that the social sectors are developed adequately. At the same time, it is important to know how the government will be able to collect various taxes from taxpayers who are paying now and those who are not in the tax net, how they will be brought into that. We need to work on it in a very comprehensive manner, and we need various steps to do that. One of the first steps that is required is to make sure that the internal accounting system of the country is brought to such a level that whoever is earning any income, he will not be able to escape the tax net. That's very prerequisite of that, and that needs to be done. We also need to ensure that the tax laws are simplified a great deal, because more complicated law you make, Mr. Bharadwaj's fraternity and my own colleagues in the profession will be very happy because they will get adequate work. But it is not to the despair of the taxpayer that we'll have to make sure that the tax system, tax administration and tax laws are made in such a manner that they will be totally simple and very easy to implement. While that is required, it is also important that we have a problem that any law that is made is challenged because it is not simple. So if you make a simple law, then probably the need for a tribunal will not be felt. But having decided that you make any law, it is bound to be interpreted in two different ways by two different stakeholders, by the government on one hand and by the taxpayer on the other. And therefore there is a need for a reconciliation of such conflicting views, and therefore we have a system wherein the appeals go up to the income tax appellate tribunal, or in case of excise, customs and service tax to their tribunal, and thereafter it goes to High Court and it can also go to the Supreme Court. This bill envisages that those matters which are heard from appeal from the income tax appellate tribunal or the other tribunal will be heard now rather than by the High Court, will be heard by this new tribunal, tax tribunal that is created. And therefore this will obviously a very great deal the adversities that are faced by the taxpayers, because going to the High Court, they are hearing all types of matters. They may be hearing matters pertaining to criminal law, civil law, they may be pertaining matters with commercial law, and therefore exclusive tribunal dealing only with tax laws will definitely go a big way. It will help the taxpayer, and therefore this is a welcome measure. While that is true, we really need to ensure that there are several areas in which I think we need to apply our mind a little more. Number one, a small matter, whether the minister would agree that normally we call income tax as tax, whereas we call customs and excise as duties. Whereas when you are calling this tribunal, you are calling it National Tax Tribunal. Probably it could have been more appropriate to call it National Tax and Duties Tribunal, because that would have more appropriately covered area. Or in any case, you are planning to amend the Income Tax Act, Wealth Tax Act, you are amending Excise Act, Customs Act, Service Tax Act, probably could have brought that amendment there to call not custom duty, but if you have called custom taxes, then it could not have been felt. But having called the primary tax as a duty and then to call an apex tribunal as a tax tribunal, probably we have stopped confusing the issue. So the second matter is related to location. We have said that this tribunal will be located in New Delhi. I still don't understand why everything has to be located in New Delhi. India is the national capital, political capital is in New Delhi. But that does not mean that every entity that is created in India has to be by law, has to be located in New Delhi. Sir, in fact, more than 26% of the taxes of the country are collected from Mumbai city. And therefore, if at all, the location has to be done on a basis wherein it will obviate the difficulties of various taxpayers, it is more appropriate that should be located in Mumbai than in New Delhi. In any case, locating it in New Delhi doesn't really make any sense, but probably the draftsman always insists that every should be located in New Delhi, and I don't know for what reason. And then again, we always will tell the ministries who are going to locate their offices, the Urban Development Ministry will tell them that there is no place available in New Delhi, so you probably go out. So why you are by law asking a tribunal to be located in New Delhi? I would really request that it may be located ideally in a place like Mumbai. Sir, there are issues regarding administration. Number one is about the appointments of the members and the chairman of this. Sir, in fact, when we are replacing the system, that appeals which are heard by the High Court now will be heard by this tax tribunal. So the same system which is applicable to the appointment of High Court judges should be applicable here. We should appoint them in same manner to ensure that the independence of these people who are appointed, at the same time to inspire confidence in the system. So therefore, I would strongly urge the minister that he should insist on appointment of these people in the same way, in the same manner as the High Court judges are appointed. And therefore, it should not be done in a manner that is stipulated that a central government will appoint a committee and they will make the appointment. That only would mean that somebody, the bureaucracy will actually make the appointment, and this will really vitiate the purpose for which the class is. So please give me time, because I know he is telling you to stop me, because otherwise I'll stop here only, sir, because all the time I can speak only for 2 minutes.
Yeah, you make it.
So this is not fair, because I saw him, sir. This is not all the time. Because even before I started probably, then you should not ask.
They have distributed time according to the party, therefore.
So it's not a party. So this is not a party debate, as the minister said. This is not a party debate. He said this is a debate on which we all should participate. Here is the question of party
time of the bill is scheduled.
Sir, so this is the appointment is a very important issue, and therefore I feel it should be done in this manner. Secondly, the related to the administration is the transfer of the members. So it is also mentioned that transfers will be effected in such way as will be decided. So transfer of High Court judges are also governed by a system which is prevalent in the country. The same system should be applicable, because now we are actually creating a system parallel to the High Courts, and therefore I would urge the minister to make sure that this is done in a proper manner. So secondly, in case of selection, so not just appointment but even the selection procedure itself, as prescribed in 12.4, should be in conformity as I just mentioned. So third issue is because clause 8 on tenure of the members. So it is already stipulated at what age they will superannuate. So having decided that, to again mention that the members will have only 5 years tenure is in fact going against the spirit of it. Like the High Court judge, when he is appointed, he continues to hold the office till he retires, or he attends his superannuation, therefore he retires, or alternatively, there are provisions made in this law wherein how he will have to vacate his office if in a situation which is prevalent, like mentioned in this particular law act. And therefore I suggest that there should not be the 5 years tenure system mentioned. It should be totally excluded from this. And the matters which will be heard, that clause 16 that we mentioned, I think the minister is aware that in this case you are only replacing that those matters which are decided by the appellate tribunal, either of income tax, service tax, excise or custom, would come before this national tax tribunal. But there are several issues pertaining to all these 4 laws which are coming to the High Court even when the matters are not decided by the tribunal. For example, there could be a matter of law which can directly be, Article 226 of the Constitution can be invoked, and the matter can directly come before the High Court. So in such cases, even it is possible that this National Tax Tribunal should not be hearing only the matters which have been disposed of by this appellate tribunal, but should be also hearing the matters in this original jurisdiction, as is happened in case of High Court. So probably the minister must apply the mind, otherwise it will again defeat the purpose, because some tax matters still will be heard by the High Courts, whereas some other tax matters, as are already disposed of by the tribunal, will come to this new tax tribunal. So therefore this is important. You may have to change the jurisdiction of this, otherwise this will really defeat the purpose for which it is made. So second point is about what you have mentioned, is that 25% of the disputed amount will have to be deposited before the tribunal, before the appeal is filed. So what happens with the 75% amount? Does this mean that a balance 75% amount is stayed by way of this virtue of this provision? Because as you know, the present provisions of the Income Tax Act says that there are amount of money once it is paid, once it is demanded, there is a procedure for collection of that amount of money. And therefore that procedure of collection goes on parallelly. If here you are saying that 25% of the amount is deposited and the appeal is entertained. But if appeal is entertained by paying 25% amount, what happens with that 75% amount? Whether the similar system is applicable for recovery of money will get stayed automatically or not, it is not mentioned. This will again create confusion, and probably many appeals will be filed to only dispose of these particular things. So probably this needs to be clarified in a proper manner. Sir, then it is stated that civil code procedure will not be applicable. This new tax tribunal will be able to work in a manner that on the basis of natural justice. Sir, there is any particular reason why the government is thinking like this? I would like to know. Because normally, any court or quasi-judicial authority like the tribunal is functioning on the basis of what is stipulated in the Civil Procedure Code. Any particular reason, 1809, any particular reason why the government is thinking of exempting this and saying that this new tax tribunal will be operating on the basis of natural justice, I would really be required to know. Sir, yeah, it should be, yeah, that I am coming to that. Sir, any appeal which is filed before them should be disposed of in a specific time frame. Otherwise, it doesn't get any benefit out of this. You can say 1 year, 9 months, 6 months, 90 days, whatever time. But there has to be specific time limits prescribed. Then only it will really happen. And there is no such time limit which has been prescribed in this. And therefore, I also strongly feel that this should be done in this manner. So second point, and I am thinking that probably we have missed out something, that there are no minimum members that are prescribed for the bench. Whereas, in this particular law we are mentioning that in the case of any matter which is related to legal matter, probably they will be able to form a special bench like a constitution bench. And that bench will have minimum 5 members. Whereas we are not mentioning how many minimum members will be there on the bench. So I think probably we'll have to mention that there will be at least 5 or more than 5, because if you don't mention that, then how can you have minimum 5 members on this constitution bench without mentioning that how many minimum members will form the bench. And therefore I think that again the point which the minister must really take into consideration. Sir, I am just trying to quickly conclude. So there are two matters more. One is regarding to transfer of cases. Once this tribunal is notified, all the cases which are now before the High Court will automatically get transferred to this new tribunal, right? That is what is the procedure. Sir, I think this is what you have mentioned. But probably what needs to be done is that partly heard matters need not be transferred at all. Otherwise, the assessor will be put to a severe injustice, because he will have to probably some matters have been partly heard. Again, they will be heard here. So probably partly heard matters should be heard in the High Court itself, and then only the remaining matters which are where the hearing has not started should be transferred there. And sir, the last matter which I was saying, that if you are going to make appointments only on the basis of government's consideration, then probably you are missing out on a point that there are assessors' interest also has to be taken into consideration. The revenue interest will be represented by the government, but there is a contrary interest of the assessee which will not get reflected at all. So if appointment is made only from the panel, which is only sponsored by the government, then it will not be really representing the interest of the taxpayers, and therefore it really needs to be done in that particular manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mahata.